Hey, this is Rocket Brain Surgeon. Today we're following around SR-360. He is in the STA-1. This is the Tier 8 Japanese medium tank, characterized by an excellent -10 degrees of gun depression, solid mobility, solid camo, absolutely no armor to speak of, and a really great gun for its tier. The base round of the gun has 218 penetration, 240 damage. That is fantastic on a Tier 8 medium tank. It means you're going to rely on the base AP round for most of your shooting rather than having to shoot a lot of premium ammo. Some of the older tanks, for example the Pershing or the T-44, might have to shoot a lot of premium ammo just to penetrate. We're in a Tier 10 battle, and one of those tanks will probably have a hard time, much harder than the STA-1 will. The damage per minute is pretty high at about 2400 as well. This is near tank destroyer level of damage per minute, which is kind of a signal of how you should be playing the tank. The combination of very poor armor and very solid damage per minute means you should tend towards the back of the pack. Complicating the process in this particular game, SR does not have Sixth Sense, or rather he has Ghetto Sixth Sense. When the enemy is pointing at you, that's how you know you're spotted. I'm guessing he does not have Sixth because he skipped the Abysmal Chiri. There's just not enough time to get Sixth Sense before that if he skipped a couple tanks. It's fine if he skipped tanks, no problem. Frankly, the Chiri stopped my progression down this line completely. I rage sold it and I'm not coming back to it. Which is too bad, because I think the STA-1 is a solid overall package. It feels similar to an FCM or a Leo, where you have pretty good firepower, solid mobility, but the armor is just not going to do you any favors. Personally, I love a tough turret. Turret armor is some of the best armor in the game. It's some of the most reliable armor in the game, and it always sucks to hide 90% of your tank, and that last 10% they hit it and damage you, and it just makes us sad. Having said that, though, they still have to actually make contact with that last 10%, and that can be very hard to do given that massive gun depression. SR is a really good player at utilizing the gun depression and exposing the minimum amount of his tank possible at any given time. SR has taken the STA to a very good place on the map for it to utilize that great gun depression. The more gun depression you have, the more sides of the hills you can play on. The less gun depression that you have to play either on the very top or the very bottom of a hill. He's declining to be more active and play in the F4, F5 area, which is in more of a direct contact with the enemy, and try to get side shots on the people moving on the east, or just kind of picking his spots where he can. Again, with this tank, you don't want to be seen. You can't have a long exposure time. With something like the Type 59 or even the Pershing, the turret is tough enough to withstand some pain. The STA's turret can surprise you at times, but more often than not, the shot's just going through. The hull armor is disappointing in one area only. Sometimes it's nice to have just a little bit of armor rather than no armor at all. What do I mean by that? I mean the hull armor is 50 millimeters thick in the front. And now if it was 80 millimeters or 100 millimeters thick, that wouldn't be any different, so why do I care? Well, it's the overmatching problem, where if it's a shell, if it's big enough, makes contact with your tank and auto-penetrates. That's kind of the issue that I have with it. Now, when I first saw this replay, at this point I thought SR was just going full ham. I thought, well, he doesn't want to live anymore. Okay, I get it. But if you look at the angles a little bit more, it makes sense. And this is something that good players do a lot, is they make sense of where the enemy is and what structures are around them in the firing angle. So it kind of looks like he's hanging out in the open. But you can see in the B8 square on the mini-map, the team has secured kind of the east side, so he knows that there's really not going to be fire coming from over there, and he's putting that house in between him and the enemies on the hill. Now the T-44 had to adjust a bit to shoot him, but SR is going to adjust more to counteract that, so he can still get shots on the people in the E4, E5 area, be protected from that hill on his right, and play a more active role than he has been previously. And here it looks like he's just exposing himself to that T-44, but there's a caveat. The T-44 has to come down the hill. There's no way he has enough gun depression to shoot at SR. So, in effect, he's still using the environment to prevent shots being taken. He's switched to heat because the E100, the side of the turret, can be difficult even for something with 218 penetration to go through. And then he'll switch back to the very reliable AP round once he moves away from the E100. In the early game, it's generally all about heavies and tank destroyers using their hit points or alpha respectively to determine where the fight happens and how the fight happens. But as the game goes on, the map opens up. Tanks leave the battlefield and there's just more places to go. And now we're seeing a little bit more of that mobility of the STA. He's showing good technique here by using the sniper view to get the maximum amount of his tank hidden. When you just barely peek your reticle over the hill, that means most of your tank is hidden as it can be, and since this tank has great gun depression, he can hide most of it. The T-44 on the distance missed on his first shot, which shows that yes, it is not always the easiest thing to hit a tiny sliver of a tank from long range. But when the T-44 hits on the next two shots, it's just a reminder that standing around and trading shots like that face to face is not quite what you want to be doing in the STA. The tank does have a very low effective aim time, and with decent snapshot capability, if you're ever forced into the situations where you need to kind of square off face to face between hard cover, you can just pop out, take the shot very quickly, and pop back into cover. No problem. Competitively, the tank is not used that much because it does not have one of those minimaxing type of roles. If you want overwhelming firepower, you're probably going to bring an autoloader. If you want armor, you're going to bring something else. If you want to scout, you're going to bring something else. But for a pub game, I think the STA is going to be a great choice. You have that decent gun depression and a solid view range and mobility, so no map is going to be a problem. You'll always be able to find a very decent spot on every map. Also, the reliable base round with that high penetration is going to make higher tier games really good for you. You're not going to need to spend a lot of money on premium ammo. You're just going to be very effective right out of the box. Overall, I think the STA-1 is a very comfortable tank for pub games. Hope you enjoyed. Happy hunting.